Hey, gorgeous! Welcome to the Business Mindset Podcast with Holly Wharton, which combines powerful strategies on how to upgrade your business mindset, along with practical business tips to grow your business. This podcast features solo shows with Holly and also interviews with inspiring women entrepreneurs from around the world. Thank you so much for joining us today. And now, here's your host, Holly Wharton.
Hello and welcome to the Business Mindset Podcast, episode 185. This is your host, Holly Wharton, and I'm here with today's special guest, Racheal Cook. Racheal is a green smoothie enthusiast, restorative yoga advocate, and award-winning business strategist who believes that entrepreneurs can grow their dream business while living their dream life right now. Welcome, Racheal.
Hey, Holly. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm very excited to have a chat with you today.
Yeah.
So why don't you start out by telling us a little bit about your background and your business journey and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. So my background is a little different than what you hear most entrepreneurs saying, like that they started their journey with their first lemonade stand when they were 5 years old or something like that. I actually didn't think I was going to be an entrepreneur. I specifically didn't think I was going to be an entrepreneur because both my parents are. And I remember growing up and thinking, okay, well, if you're going to be an entrepreneur and own your own business, you have to be like my parents, who are both super extroverted, super outgoing, like they're the life of the party. They know everyone in my hometown. And I, on the other hand, was super quiet and introverted and kind of a bookish girl who played in chamber orchestras and didn't think I was ever going to be that person. So I actually went to university for music performance for orchestral French horn, which is pretty nerdy, but I loved it. And what ended up happening was I had to pay a lot of my way through college and I didn't want to get a job. So I was going through, the School of Music, which is, you didn't really have a time to have a job if you're a music student because you're taking all these 1 credit hour classes and your calendars are crazy. But when you're a junior or senior, you have to give a recital and it's a big deal. Like you have to give it in order to get a degree in music performance. Mm-hmm. And your family comes in from out of town. All your friends come in. I mean, imagine being on stage, you and a pianist in front of like a whole auditorium of people for an hour. It's a big deal. So I was thinking to myself, as my friends started doing their recitals, they were like, I have all these friends and family coming in from out of town. I want to have a reception. And I thought to myself, cool, I could do that. I could host a reception for them. I love to cook. I have a massive family. I have no problem making food for 50 or 100 people.
Wow.
So that was my first dabble in entrepreneurship, was me going, I don't want a part-time job. How can I make money to support myself through college without having to get a job? So I started kind of a catering business without meaning to. And then I started tutoring on the side. I was tutoring for the athletic department and was told, okay, you can get paid $15 per student per hour. And I was like, is there a limit to how many students I can tutor at a time? So I had study groups of 8 to 10, baseball players or tennis players or whatever. And I was at that point in the business department and I was tutoring accounting and economics and finance to a group of athletes at one time and getting paid essentially $150 an hour. So that's always been kind of what I was good at, was figuring out, okay, how can I take something that I'm good at, I can leverage it and find a way to make the money I want to make so I could go off and do the other things I wanted to do. And I realized that entrepreneurship didn't mean for me that I had to go out there and be the life of the party. I just had to find a problem that needed to be solved and then get myself out there. So that is how I ended up into entrepreneurship. I have 2 degrees in entrepreneurship. So I ended up finishing my undergrad and then going on to get my MBA in entrepreneurship. And I went straight into consulting, which is, I think, what most MBAs do. We all get recruited straight into finance or consulting. Yep. I got recruited into financial consulting. And because my degree is in small business and entrepreneurship, I was working with small businesses, but not like the kind we're talking to. I was talking to small businesses that were like, 50 to 200 people. They were multiple millions of dollars. They were a lot bigger in scale and scope. How I ended up in this whole world, which was quite a shift, was simply I got burned out from consulting, which I don't think is unusual.
Yeah,
most people I talk to who are in those worlds, they're like, yep, right there with you. I hit burnout. I felt those panic attacks. I was ready to jump out too. And I did. So I ended up on my yoga mat for 3 months trying to heal after like 3 years of just grinding. And my yoga teacher said to me, well, Rach, I know you have this MBA in small business and entrepreneurship. I know you have all this experience and maybe my business is too small for you to even look at, but I'm really struggling with the studio. Could you help me? And I was like, okay. This was like little divine breadcrumb, like my antenna shot up and it was like, okay, I should just say yes. I don't really know what I'm doing right now, but I should say yes. And so that's the journey, essentially. It's all been very kind of intuitive and serendipitous along the way. And it's just been a lot of saying yes when I feel like this is the direction I should be moving.
I love that. And so after you started working with that first yoga studio, how did it expand from there? Did you just start kind of attracting more and more small solopreneurships to work with, or what happened?
It was originally, and that's my first business, the Yogipreneur. The Yogipreneur.com is still up and running. There's still tons of content there and still generating revenue for me. But what started happening was literally, it was all referral for probably the first 2 years. It was all word of mouth. She started telling other people. And, like anything, once you get into a community, the community talks to each other. So she started telling teachers she went to training with and other people. So I was able to build a nice little completely 100% referral based word of mouth business for a good while. And I ended up taking it online because I got pregnant about 6 months after starting that business. And I got pregnant with twins and found out I was going to be on bed rest. So I realized, okay, I don't want to travel anymore. How can I do all of this online? Thankfully, it was 2009. People were getting used to the idea of Skype. GoToWebinar was available. So I realized, all those trainings I'd been teaching in person in a yoga studio, I could teach on GoToWebinar. All of the consults I'd been having in person, like actually going to somebody's studio or somebody's business, I was like, we can just talk via Skype. So that was the start of it. And since then, I'm pretty much 8 years into it being in this new format. My kids are now 6 years old and in first grade.
Wow.
And that's been the journey of it, has just been, making that one shift. And what started happening over the years and how I got to just RachealCook.com was once I got a few years into it, I had my third child. I just had more and more people coming to me saying, I'm not a yoga teacher, but I'm a life coach. I'm a health coach. I'm a holistic healthcare practitioner. I'm a copywriter. I'm a creative entrepreneur, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, cool. I want to work with you too. And I just keep saying yes to those divine breadcrumbs.
I love that. And so have you always been the kind of person that found it easy to follow those breadcrumbs, to follow your intuition, to follow that gut feeling? Or is that something you developed along the way?
So remember how I mentioned that before I started this whole thing, I had 3 years of hustling and grinding before I had to leave the corporate world? That was 3 years of, for anybody who hasn't been in that type of environment, imagine you're working 75 hours a week. You show up at the office at 7 a.m. and you probably aren't leaving till sometimes 9 o'clock at night. I was on the road. My car, my poor little Prius was just littered with like all sorts of food wrappers because I was driving all the time. I was taking no care of myself. I was really burning the candle on both ends. And the only day I really had off was Sundays. And I would just spend the whole day like in a collapsed heap. I was so exhausted. And it really wasn't until I started having panic attacks. I got diagnosed with adrenal fatigue. I had just a whole host of health issues that I realized, okay, I think my body's trying to tell me something here. And that was hard for me. I wouldn't consider myself a super woo-woo person. I tend to be super practical type of person. But I had to get a lot of help and do a lot of deep inner work to start to pay attention to those divine breadcrumbs. And it took a lot of learning to trust myself instead of doing what was expected of me. Because at that point, I had crossed everything off the list. It was like, get the advanced degree, get married to a cute hubby, buy your own car, be making a great paycheck. Like I was every parent's dream kid. You know what I'm saying? And then I'm looking at them going, this sucks. I'm miserable. I'm quitting. So it's something that I've had to learn. And the thing is, as I've learned it, again, I think you kind of fight against the same problems. They just come up again and again and again. I've gotten better at identifying those signs that something's out of alignment for me. Mm-hmm. So that was not the only time I've ever burned out. I've continued to hit that wall and kind of push against it. But now I notice the signs of it. Now I know how to take care of myself, which is something I didn't know in my 20s. It's just a huge shift.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a massive shift once you start kind of taking care of yourself and seeing the signs that you're approaching your limit before you actually hit the limit.
Before you crash like flaming car wreck into it.
Yes, exactly. So one of the things that I want to talk about with you is this whole concept of the business sweet spot. And you're talking a lot lately about how your business sweet spot can simplify your business and amplify your results. So tell us a little bit about what this business sweet spot is and how do you find it?
Sure. So I love this topic, and it actually developed because of my clients. Like straight up, they helped me create this whole methodology that I now use as a framework when I'm helping them through their business. And what started happening, which I think is common for a lot of people when you start working with other people, no matter what you're doing, whether you're a coach or a teacher or a trainer, we often tend to think that people can do exactly what we've done and get the same results. And it couldn't be further from the truth. Mm-hmm. We are all wired differently. Yep. We all have a different combination of, passions and interests and talents and strengths and these amazing gifts. And we also show up differently for the people we're here to serve. Mm-hmm. So we have things that people actually want from us.
Yes.
And the sweet spot is that combination of those things. It's understanding your passion, which really is that deeper underlying why that drives you forward, that has you excited about your work, that has you getting up, that makes you think about not just the immediate reason you're doing something, but the big picture why. Mm-hmm. And then we have your strengths, which is a big part of your sweet spot. I really believe in doing business and setting up your business, designing your business around what you do best, instead of trying to be a square peg in a round hole, trying to force something that's just never going to fit you or feel good. Mm-hmm. And then finally, we have your people, understanding what resonates with them. So how you fascinate them, how you naturally attract them, because the way I attract people might be different from the way you attract people. Mm-hmm. So as I started working with my clients, like I said, I'm super linear. I'm super type A. And I was working in the yoga world with a lot of yogis and holistic healthcare practitioners. And they're not generally super type A or super linears. They're much more intuitive. They're much more holistic thinkers. They don't tend to think in step by step. They tend to think, I don't know how to describe it other than spherically. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like kind of everything at the same time. And so I was teaching them what I knew worked. And then they were like, but this doesn't fit. This doesn't feel good for me. Mm-hmm. So as I started working with more and more people, I started identifying these trends in what was working. There were some people who nothing made them happier than just being like in the work. Like they wanted their hands on stuff. They wanted to be making stuff, creating stuff, organizing stuff. Then there were the people who nothing made them happier than being out there and sharing a big message and getting the word out in a big, big way. And that's where they knew they could shine the most. Then there were others who just loved their clients. And when I say love, I don't mean in this kind of like love the way we all talk about we love our dream clients. I'm talking about like these are clients that they have watched have babies and they've been with them for so long and they know them so incredibly well. And then there's people like me who are the people who just want to uncomplicate things and solve problems and create that, step-by-step game plan that can be rinsed and repeated as much as possible. Mm-hmm. So I started to see these patterns in all of my clients. And then I was like, okay, there's something here. I can uncomplicate how they approach planning their business and designing their business based on these kind of 4 themes. And I call them the maker, the maven, the mentor, and the mastermind. And once they understood these themes, the best part about it, Holly, was they no longer sat there overwhelmed when we were talking about something, because I could say, you're a mentor. You love being super high touch. You love being right there in the ground with your community and with your people. Probably trying to go out there and live behind your computer screen and have a completely, online business where you have no interaction with your community, not going to be a good fit for you. Let's talk about how you can be super engaged and super high touch and feel really connected to your people, because that's what's going to be the best fit. And once I gave them that permission, they felt like, okay, I don't have to do anything that doesn't feel right, or I don't have to do anything that's not really aligned with what I want to be creating in the world. And that's huge, because we're all overwhelmed with all the things we think we should be doing. But really, you don't have to do that much in order to get your business where you want to go. You just have to find the right things.
I love that. I love that. And so you've got this quiz on your website that helps people find what their profile is.
Yes.
And then what do people do with that from there? Do you use that to work with them? How do people take it from there?
Yeah, when you take the quiz, it gives you a result, but it also gives you a guide. And this was a guide that we spent a lot of time on, and it answers some big things. It shows you the biggest strengths and the biggest struggles for people with those themes. So kind of like, watch out for these, leverage these a little more. It's also going to give you kind of some practical strategies that you can use based on what stage you are in your business. If you're super early on, do this type of thing. If you're a little bit more advanced, you can do this type of thing. And then it gives some of the go-to marketing strategies. So all of that's in a free guide when you take the quiz. And from there, I mean, I use it super closely with all of my clients as we do everything from planning out their offerings to designing their marketing strategy to getting their their message out there in a bigger way. It helps me determine a lot of what I think is going to work best for them and uncomplicate all of the options into a real clear, like, this is the type of thing we want to go for.
I love that. So what kinds of results have your clients found as a result of working with this system of knowing what their profile is and using those particular kind of recipes that you put together for each profile?
The results, of course, vary because some people have given themselves permission to really go after something bigger. I've had some people who generally my masterminds, which is my sweet spot theme, my masterminds tend to get really excited because then they tend to do things like set up online sales funnels and really grow their online presence. And I've had several people who are able to quickly double or triple their revenue because we can set those up very, very quickly and easily. I've had some other people who it's just been a matter of eliminating what was dragging them down before that gave them the opportunity to keep moving forward. So for a lot of my makers, the people who like to be like doing work for people, they love being in their craft all the time. They were struggling with traditional marketing. And like for a lot of them, they were just like, I just want to sit here on InDesign all day long or whatever it was. And it's like once they understood how to tap into that, into word of mouth, and they understood how to really develop an amazing, beautiful customer experience, they were able to double or triple their prices really quickly, simply because they had more of a framework of understanding like what the highest and best value of them was. So that's a lot of what we've been able to do by eliminating all the things that people think they should be doing and instead focus on what does drive them forward, because it's a little bit different for everybody. Then they can quickly see amazing results because they focus in on what matters most. And
I love that. And I love how you don't try to lump everyone into one blueprint that works for everyone, because I know a lot of people tend to do that. And I find that ridiculous because, as you've said, there are different types of people. Different people are motivated by different things, and there are different ways that work for different people.
And some people I find are a hybrid.
Yeah.
Some people, and this could be just because they're naturally a hybrid, or could be, this is probably a reflection more of my state of life because I've got small children. So I attract a lot of moms with smaller children, which means for them, I often hear from them where they're like, okay, I think I'm a mastermind, or I think I'm a maven, which is usually building bigger platforms, a lot more public, but they're at a stage of life right now where they just want to keep it small and manageable. So they're like, you know what, instead of trying to launch a big, huge program, I'm just going to work one-on-one right now and be really content with that and make it stable and consistent. And I love that. It's all about finding what really works for you in the moment and I always tell people that I work with, I'm like, it doesn't matter if you're reading a book or listening to one of my programs, take what resonates with you right now and just put the rest, back where it came from. You don't have to take everything I tell you as gospel truth. You can just take what makes sense for you now. And even if it's just one little nugget, it will help.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important. So you've also got a book called The Business Sweet Spot. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I imagine you delve even deeper into this topic there.
Yeah. And again, it's all I kind of do things in reverse. Like, it's not like I wrote the book and then created the quiz and then wrote the program. I actually had the program first, which is Sweet Spot Strategy. And then I created the quiz about, I guess, a year and a half ago. And from there, I wrote the book. So it kind of worked backwards there. But the book basically walks you through how you can discover your business sweet spot, how you can determine really, the big questions that we all hear. Where do I start? What do I focus on? What do I do next? And once you have your business sweet spot and you understand your why and your what, and then how you're going to actually do that, it simplifies all of your business strategy because you have a guiding star. You have something to point your ship towards. And it also goes through more than people get just from the quiz with the downloadable guide that we have there for free, but it actually walks through the different marketing strategies that we highly recommend in a lot more detail so that people can really kind of take this book and the free quiz and have enough to really get themselves up and going.
I love that. And this is your second book, is that correct?
It is. 2 books in a year.
Excellent. Tell us a little bit about your first book.
My first book is Fired Up and Focused, and similar to this one, it came after I created the program. Actually, I think this is it's my baby. I love it. I created a free challenge in 2014, which I have to say it changed the game for my business. It really was amazing. And it was the first round of it was a 28-day free challenge. And then I shortened it and continue to shorten it just so that it's super digestible. But the Fired Up and Focused challenge started as a daily challenge that you signed up for 100% for free. And you'd get these little bite-sized lessons on how to plan, prioritize, and boost your productivity. My whole goal was to help people understand how they can work smarter and the very specific strategies I use in order to do that. So I actually took the whole challenge, had it transcribed, passed it off to an editor who happens to be my husband because he's a former English teacher. And we edited it into a book format because we started hearing from all these amazing students who'd been through the free challenge. And they were saying, oh my gosh, this challenge completely changed the way I approach my workday. It changed the way I approach my business. I wish I had a copy sitting on my desk so I could just flip to it if I needed a refresher. And I was like, okay, I'll do that. So that's how we have the book.
I love that. And I think that's a really unconventional way of doing books. And I love it that when people take existing content like audio or video and then getting the audio and then doing the transcripts and then cleaning it up into a book, I think that's such a fantastic resource, using what you've already got and making it into another format that's perhaps more digestible for some people.
Exactly. And I find this is just something I love, and this is the way I'm wired. I tend to like creating something and then making it work for me in as many formats as possible. So I'm somebody who I repurpose my content all the time. I'll take content from a webinar and turn it into a podcast or turn it into a blog post or turn it into a newsletter. And I'll share the same thing just across as many formats as I can, especially once I know it really is resonating. I think that's just a smart thing to do because we're in this content marketing world where we think we need to just churn out new content all the time.
Yeah.
But you really don't. You don't need to. In fact, the more you can take one same message and just get it on as many different platforms as possible, the more it'll work for you.
Exactly.
Because you're able to get it in front of different styles of learners and different types of audiences.
Yeah, I think that is excellent because as you said, everyone's got their own preferred method of learning. Different people prefer to read. Some people like videos. Some people like podcasts, audio. I think that's really, really an important point, is to just kind of take that one piece of content that you've got and translate it into all of the different formats. That's really, really good. So, Racheal, do you have any women business mentors, or are there any women entrepreneurs who inspire you?
Oh my goodness. I have to say, I'm kind of old school in this regard. Most of my women business mentors who inspire me actually aren't in this whole world. Probably no one knows who they are. I had a mentor who was oh my God, she was my idol in college, Marty Hackney, at the Entrepreneurial Initiative in North Carolina where I worked. And she was somebody who changed my life. I mean, I was in my 20s working on my MBA, working as her assistant director in the Entrepreneurial Initiative, where we were working to get startup funding for all these different biotech companies. And she was a woman who, I don't know exactly how old she was, but she was like in her 50s or 60s and had built and run all these different businesses over the course of her career in a time when women didn't do that, in a part of the US where women didn't do that. You know what I mean? Like it was Southern United States, a little bit of a different mindset. She had been very much in a men's world in a lot of places. And she just really inspired me that there was a way to go out there and really create whatever it is you want to create for yourself and create a life that you really absolutely love. So she would be a major one. No one in our world and the whole online world probably even knows Marty, but she made such a huge impact in my life and gave me huge opportunities that I would have never had. And I would have to say the other one would be my mom, who was an entrepreneur. My mom's actually she was a soil consultant, which is a biologist who basically goes in before you develop any land and literally tests the soil to see if it's able to be built on and decides if the property is buildable and what kinds of things you can build and all of that. And she had her own business for several years when I was very, very little, but then she got into an accident and was no longer able to continue running it. But she always encouraged me to do my own thing. And I remember growing up, my mom would tell me, Racheal, the job you want hasn't even been invented yet. So and she was like, don't be afraid to just keep doing what you think you should do, because the job you want hasn't been invented yet. And I think that's something I think about a lot. I think about how, at 20 years ago when I was in high school, I never would have imagined we were just getting internet.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It was like we still had dial-up back then. We didn't even have computers in our home. And now look at where we are. And I think about my daughter who's 6 and, or any of my kids, my daughter or my sons, who knows what they're going to do?
Yeah. It's probably something we can't even imagine because it doesn't even exist.
Yeah. It's crazy. So I think that's really important because I have a huge family and I see a lot of kids who think that they have to do a predetermined path because it's what people expect. But if you're willing to be creative, there's so much opportunity out there.
Yes, I totally agree. We have so many options these days that didn't ever exist before.
Exactly.
So Racheal, how can other women entrepreneurs, perhaps some people who are listening today, how can they work with you?
They can find me over at rachealcook.com. And of course, since we talked about the Business Sweet Spot, take the Business Sweet Spot quiz. It's only a few questions. It just takes a few minutes there to answer based on your strengths, not based on what you think you should be doing, but what fits and feels best for you. And then you'll get a great free guide that allows you to start exploring how you can make your business work better for you. That's really the best way to get started and to kind of get into my world. And of course, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram and all the social media, but I'm usually around Facebook.
Perfect. All right. That was going to be my next question. What's your favorite social network to hang out on?
Facebook, hands down. It's easy.
I know. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, Holly. I really appreciate it. And I would love to hear from anybody. If this resonated with you, don't hesitate to reach out.
Great. And thank you for listening. And remember to visit hollywharton.com/185 for the show notes on this episode. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to the Business Mindset Podcast with your host, Holly Wharton. You can find more information about today's episode, including links for topics that were discussed at hollywharton.com. And if you enjoyed this episode, please remember to head over to iTunes and leave a quick review of this podcast. It just takes a minute. Thank you.